before we get started, I would love to hear, who is Remy and what do you do?
Remy is a multifaceted, neurodivergent entrepreneur. I am the founder of Zella Life and Vibes5D, but Zella Life, which we're focusing on today, is a coaching and behavioral analytics platform. And we help organizations solve for leadership development gaps. And one of the really amazing, cool things that we're able to do is take the analytics from the coaching sessions and turn those into real-time insights back to organizations. And it gives a real-time pulse on the true talent pain points, operational pain points. And so they can solve for those in real time.
Wow. Wow. So if an audience wanted to find you, what's the number one thing an entrepreneur or somebody at the C-level executive should think of Zella Life when it comes down to your services or anything you provide outside of, just the standard coaching?
Yeah, I think if people, if leaders want to grow and scale their company, they really have to think about the human capital and how you can actually grow your business and retain your talent if you just invest in them, but also in themselves as leaders. And that's how you can strengthen culture in your organization. That's how you can retain folks. That's how you can improve your talent engagement. And when all of those things are in place, there's no limit in terms of how a company can grow and accelerate.
You built Zella Life around closing leadership development gaps.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what was the moment that made you say, someone has to solve this? And that someone ended up being you.
Look, I'm really passionate about this because I was that person, right? In an organization, I was the middle manager that was identified as high potential talent, but I kept hitting glass ceilings. And I also worked in organizations where I did not have the same type of mentorship that some of my colleagues did because I was often the only woman on a team or maybe the only person of color on the team, and just always felt like I was kind of missing out on mentorship, number one. And then two, we were given, I worked at great organizations that provided, training and development, but that was always very cookie cutter and didn't cater to, an individual's needs. And we're all built differently. We all have different experiences and upbringings and backgrounds that really play into how we show up in the world and especially in the workplace. And when I asked for executive coaching, leadership coaching, for myself, because I saw executives getting it and they're like, oh no, you get the cookie cutter training. That's just for executives. And when I started talking, to HR leaders, they always said that people were their number one headache and that people did good work, but they didn't have the skills to lead. So therefore they couldn't promote them, and employees would get frustrated and they would either leave and go to another company or they leave and go start their own business.
Yes.
And so when I went and invested in myself, I went through programs and therapy and coaching. It was so transformational. It changed my life. I went back in, I started getting promoted, I started making more money, and ultimately it gave me the courage, to leave corporate America and jump into entrepreneurship. So it was just so transformational. But what I saw were gaps and it's an antiquated system in that, and I get it because of budget, but you're going to choose people that are high potential and invest in them and then hope they stay.
Hope. That's the key word, right? Hope.
That's the key. And hope they stay.
Yeah. And that's when you rely on the managers to sell the vision to their so-called future talent or potential.
Yeah.
That you can be one, but the activity piece, the support piece is so siloed from the leadership that it's just at some point it becomes just words. It's not, and that loses trust.
Yeah. And so it was, how can we make coaching scalable within an organization so they can offer it to as many people as possible. And you can address people's individual needs, but then also how do you make it so that when a manager or, an individual contributor goes through a coaching experience, that it's so transformational and so phenomenal that they want to invest in themselves. And, a lot of HR leaders will tell you, I wish, if you had a wish list, I wish that people would invest in their own development and not rely on the company to do it for you. And so it was just all these different gaps, and hearing all the problems on both sides of the fence, and like, how can we build something that's going to address all of those problems? And we're doing it.
Do you?
And yeah.
I would love to hear more about it, how you guys doing it. But before we do you think when you hear these type of statements from HR leaders that I wish people invest in their own self
Yeah.
instead of relying on a company to do so? Because I know I did since
Mm-hmm.
24 years old, and I know it impacted me.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I took a traditional route to just, oh wow, I should engage myself in self growth. Somebody happens to be a friend of mine, introducing the right people that opened my eyes to grow myself, the significance of self growth. I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of people understand what it is. I don't think they know how to go about it. Yes, there's a lot of resources out there,
Sure.
but it could be just
More than ever before.
more than ever. Like you literally can go on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube and just grow yourself,
Exactly.
right? But why there's still such a big gap of knowing how to take advantage of it and actually
Mm-hmm.
doing it, right? Like that here's the information, they know that's there, but they don't, the gap is still significant. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear around facing yourself and facing things, that you may learn that you're, I'll just speak from my own experience. And I see this true today in with the folks that we coach and cohorts that we coach, especially when you work in an organization. It's always easier to point the finger outward, right? So I was doing the same thing. It was like the company this, the company that, they should be doing this, they should be doing that. The reason why it's always everything else and everybody else is the problem. And when I started my own, journey, personal, professional development journey, it was going into those sessions, you're being given a mirror and holding it up at yourself. And it's like, oh, I'm part of the problem too. I'm actually a co-creator, and we all are co-creators in every situation that we're in. It's never one person's fault, right? And so having that realization of like, oh, I'm part of the problem too, but I can also be part of the solution. And there's something very empowering about when you get to hold the mirror up and realize like, I actually can have power over myself and how I show up differently and can create a different outcome or make different choices. Right. So fear, I think, is a really big one. I think it's changing a lot in terms of stigma around mental health and doing deeper work on yourself. And I don't think people realize that some of our deepest rooted, issues that may stem from family, from your upbringing, and how they're subconsciously they're showing up in the workplace and how you interact with people, right? And I'll give you an example. We were coaching a young lady who, in her team meeting, she would always shut down whenever her manager spoke, and she just like get really triggered and not want to participate. Through her coaching experience, her one-on-one coaching experience, she was able to connect the dots that her manager reminded her of her mother.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so the coach gave her some exercises, right, and things to do to help her, deepen that understanding, do some forgiveness work with her mom. And, obviously this is something really personal and deep that no manager is going to uncover, in a one-on-one session. But through that personalized coaching experience and being matched with the right coach, she was able to uncover that. And so now she's showing up in meetings with full awareness and able to literally coach herself in the meeting, in the moment, to not get triggered and then to fully participate.
That's incredible. But
Yeah.
believe it or not, Remy, that it
Mhm.
was the exact same recognition I discovered of
Mhm.
myself the last 5 years.
I had a similar situation with one of my colleagues,
Yep.
like
Yeah.
reminding me of my dad,
That
right?
for me was my mom. Always,
Yeah.
I was not good enough,
Yeah.
this and that. And every time she yells and starts talking at me, there's a form of me shutting down. And I
Mhm.
think one of my mentors in the past was kind of the same style type of coaching. And I recognized that I was not doing a good job being coached by somebody with that type of authority or delivery. And
Yes.
I had to learn the hard way. And obviously now it's a self recognition. I take it very carefully. And when I do come across somebody like that, I right away kind of like, oh, okay. I shouldn't say shut down, but more take a step back. But I recognize why I'm like that, and it certainly helped me to be more forgiving. And I picked up some amazing information from those individuals that helped me with my career in the
Mhm.
future. Yeah, it's crazy. But
Yeah.
you're right. That's a self growth piece that could be so beneficial for individuals on a, I don't want to say on a low level, but more about individual contributors, not the managers in the corporate world. And I feel like, unless please correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like when those individuals, the individual contributors are given more resources from self growth standpoint, the manager is going to just shine so much more because his team is producing.
Yeah, but I disagree with on the manager's piece because I think the recent data that I saw was that only 22% of managers are actually qualified to be in managerial leadership roles.
No kidding. That low.
22%. Yeah, and that makes sense because if you just think about what I just said, like how corporate America as a whole has been, right, where you primarily invest in the individual leaders at the executive level
Yes.
and provide them coaching that's individual. Everybody else is getting cookie cutter training. A lot of managers get promoted more so because of, they're high performers. They're increasing the bottom line. They're generating revenue. They're doing good work, but the soft skills piece still is underdeveloped. And when you have organizations that don't focus on the soft skill piece. And you tend to see this more, I would say, in smaller organizations, more on the SMB side of the fence. Look, corporates have all the dollars and resources to put people through multiple interviews and personality tests and all the things, right? And they're looking for that. But especially if you take fast growing companies where it's all about growing the business and people aren't investing on the people side, then you're going to have that challenge. But we know that people don't quit, companies, they quit bosses. And
100%.
and so most managers are not qualified to lead, and that's why and I think the number 52% of issues within a company stem at the managerial level. So there's all this correlation, right? And so that's why we love to go in and work with that middle manager group within organizations and, your up and coming young talent, because we're trying to solve for those gaps, but also build culture from the ground up. And
Absolutely.
then people are getting coached at executive level, and then you're helping bridge that gap. So it solves for the big one is communication bottlenecks. I'll tell you the number one problem that we see is people don't know how to self-advocate for themselves
Where's that?
or advocate properly. That means like being able to speak up and communicate your needs and or feedback, right? Just giving organizations feedback because everybody operates in fear. I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. I don't want to be singled out. So, and I'll give you a case study example on this. We were coaching the sales support team of an organization where we're coaching a whole team. They all have their individual coach. Every single person on that team was complaining about the comp plan not being fair and equitable compared to the sales team. And the coaches were doing their individual, jobs of pushing back on them and saying, are you sharing that feedback with your manager or with HR? And everybody was a no. So here's how our behavioral analytics work. The AI was able to pick up on, hey, every single person is complaining about the comp plan a lot, right? So red flag. And then 2, here's all the reasons why they're not going and sharing. So self-advocacy would be advocating for your comp plan, right? That it's not fair and equitable. Long story short, we were able to take that data back to the organization. They went and reviewed the comp plan. It turns out it was just 2 small tweaks they needed to make to the comp plan to make it fair and equitable. By the way, 3 people were looking for new jobs because of this. So they would rather go look for a new job
Then express that.
and then advocate for themselves, right, in that situation, which is wild. So, and then the coaches worked with them on their individual reasons as to why they weren't advocating, for themselves. And some of the things that showed up were due to culture, were due to upbringing, were due to some gender stuff and gender conditioning. So this is why it's so important for why I truly will stand on the sword, die on the sword about coaching and how transformational it can be. But more importantly, why individuals need to go and invest in themselves as well and take that step, because you are showing up with everything that behind you that has brought you to this point, not your coworker, not your manager, not your VP, right? Not the company. And it's up to us to do that individual work on ourselves and understand how it's contributing to the organization and to the team and to the dynamics within.
Can I maybe ask you another question? If some of your studies shown anything when it comes down to the employees, their individual contributors, are the ones that constantly, they are on the field, they're a high performer, but they also are the ones who constantly exposing the gaps, the lacks, the negative gaps in other departments that are supporting their performance negative. And how an owner should take a look at this should because especially small business owner, CEO, owner can be very over leveraged with other data
Absolutely.
duties, and that could be just looked as a negative noise.
Right. Yeah, I think you have to take into consideration, well, is it one person or is it many people saying the same thing?
Yeah.
Right. And there's also a piece of, kind of just following the information. But we worked with an organization that had 2 teams that were always kind of beefing with each other, and a lot of how they were sharing the information about the other team was very negative. And so again, that's ownership and how you're providing the feedback, right? And how you're saying it and what you're saying. Can you support it with, evidence, so to speak, like data around it? Are you coming with a solution, right? Instead of just pointing. But I think this is where it's important for in this particular case with this organization, we saw some bias happening on the leadership part. And it was because this one team had always been kind of the darling of the organization, but they were missing some of the catty behavior of the team, like not looking at the behavior part or digging deeper, right? But just looking at performance, but not understanding that how they were showing up to those other team members was actually degrading, the camaraderie and the cohesiveness of the team, the team's working, the collaboration of the team, because of their own bias and thinking like, oh, but they perform so well. They're not doing anything. Meanwhile, they were being really crappy to their colleagues on the other team. And then that other team was, getting upset, and rightly so. But at the same time, the way they just came off as always like bitching, right?
Yeah. So there's there's a cause unless the manager will not step in and truly understand that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, and do some things, like to foster like open communication or collaborative communication or problem solving, having crucial conversations and bringing in maybe somebody third party, right? That could help support that. And so anyways, we actually were brought in to coach the team, that was catching a lot of the slack, right? And then we helped them be more effective in their communication. And one of the great outcomes of that is their VP had to leave out of town, out of the country. And while he was gone, there was some big blow up that happened. But his team, because of the coaching they had received, worked together to solve the
That's
problem with the other team.
that's
And
incredible.
so so that's the incredible part, because here's what happened. That VP, instead of now coming home and having to deal with that, right? And be the mediator and the referee and take time out of his schedule, like to do that, he no longer had to. And they resolved it completely on their own. But that's because we empowered them on how to have crucial conversations, how to resolve conflict peacefully. And then individually, but then they came together as a team and solved the problem themselves.
Yeah. Can you
Beautiful.
can you walk me through your the concept of role stacking? I really loved your concept of role stacking when you explained to me what it means. I feel like it's
Mhm.
such a crucial piece of every individual in a company, especially if they want to grow up to become a CEO, or if a CEO wants to be an entrepreneur, right? How does it
Yeah.
silently drain a founder? And what does the path out of it?
Yeah. So we see role stacking happening a lot with founders, in smaller organizations, especially that entrepreneur, that's starting out. But role stacking is when you're wearing multiple hats in, and we hear that term a lot, like, oh, I have to wear a lot of hats, right? Yes, but let's talk about what that like fully what that is and how that can take you out and lead to burnout. So you're the CEO of the organization, right? And maybe like you have a co-founder as well. But like what other roles are you taking on in the organization? So you might be the CEO, the CMO, so if you looked at it from a big organization, those people are at the top and how their responsibilities are probably more the strategy aspect and, whatnot. But then let's say under the CMO role, you're also the social media manager. You're also the content creator. You're also the video editor, right?
The sales coach.
And then, yeah, then you're doing the sales and you're doing, the follow up or the execution as well. And so when you see a visual, literally, of each C-suite hat, all the people that report under them and all the things that need to get done. And so you're wearing a lot of hats, you're probably wearing 10 hats, right? That technically could be like 10 full-time positions. That's on the business side of the fence. Now let's take your personal life. You're a father, right? You're a father, you're a
Yes.
partner,
Other
you're
partner.
the
Yep.
you
Everything.
may be you may be a son taking care of your parents or
That's
you
right.
know
That's exactly right. You're on point.
and so what if you're also a community leader, right? What if you volunteer at an organization? What if you're going to you're in an accelerator program? What if you're getting your master's while you're wearing the 22 hats at the company? You're also wearing all of these other hats. You have all of these other roles and responsibilities, in your personal life. And this is normal. I get it. Like we all have life going on and this is just what it is. But what we see founders doing is continuing to choose to take on more, right? And then feeling like you have to do it all. And so, which then leads to burnout or not implementing the self-care routines that are needed to expand your capacity so you can deal with all of these roles. And so when you look at within an organization, all the different roles you have, it's like, where are you in your actual zone of genius? where all your gifts and your strengths lie, where are the ones that are not so great. And when you can, and we did a great training around this, and I have a great slide that I should have brought up to show you. But when you can see this visually, that role stacking, then it's like, oh, wow. Like now now I understand why I'm so depleted. So what systems and processes or delegating can I do so I can take some of those hats off and maybe only have to put it on from like, let me check the work perspective, right? How can I leverage AI to support me?
You literally asked
That's a big one.
yeah, you literally asked that was my
Hmm.
last question. How do you
Hmm.
see AI can be properly utilized in role stacking
Yeah.
once the founder understands what role stacking is and how many hats you need to wear in order for you
Yeah.
to be effective in growing a company?
Yeah. Look, I mean, AI has its issues, but I think it's incredible from a founder perspective and helping you expand your capacity, helping reduce cognitive load. Even investors are looking at organizations now and how are you using AI to stretch your runway on your dollars, right? But also reduce the amount of hiring that you have to do and pushing that out because you have it working for you in all the different ways that it can possibly work for you, you
Yeah.
know? So it
Yeah.
it's a founder's best friend, honestly. Like if you're not using it, then you really need to reevaluate what you're doing. And it's really those who are using it that are going to get further faster.
Remy, this has been absolutely fantastic. I will make sure I'll post your website, your contact information in the description portion of the YouTube channel. Thank you, and have a great day, of course.